an upswing or a downward slope, this concept of being able to start at where I'm at and then successively probe out into the future or in the surrounding area and then determine a course seemed to make a lot of sense to me. Now, this might be described in a number of variables, and then I started thinking, well, what about the truly complex situations where we're not even sure what the variables are, how many there are, and we're not sure that we can accurately characterize the relationships between them. And then again, things might be changing over time. And so the last, now I've got to find my last slide here, which disappeared. Excuse me just a moment. There it is. Looks like it got hidden somehow. So then I finally arrived at what I feel as the most accurate picture, and that is with the surface, multidimensional surface, over time is moving. Now, how any point in that surface is going to change is somewhat unknown, dependent on the wind and the temperature and time and many other variables. But then I look at the same concepts we described earlier in trying to identify my point in time where I'm at, and then begin to look towards a more wider view of where I might proceed and iterate through that. And obviously, as the surface changes and moves over time, then I begin to really appreciate the aspects of evaluation that need to be considered in order to make progress and to move in a direction that would accomplish either the minimizing or the maximizing of my system. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fred. The part of what I'm enjoying about the mind mapping exercise is the use of some key concepts and playing with them and seeing where they lead. And so the terms that you've used and brought in from both your engineering background and your journey in looking at these books, Johnny Morell's a good friend. I have one of the blurbs recommending his book on his uncertainty book. And we've talked a lot about these issues. And so the terms that you've used, terms like maximizing and minimizing and optimizing, are dominant mental mindsets about how people approach the world and think about things. And as you know, a lot of the contrast that both Johnny and I are doing is between more linear approaches, which suggest that the journey unfolds this way, and you go from one place to another to reach an impact, when in fact our experience is that it unfolds much more like this, and that people are going in lots of different directions, and every one of those forks is a potential for developmental evaluation. And the additional conceptualization that fits, I think, better with developmental evaluation than maximizing and minimizing and even optimizing is satisficing. Herb Simon's term, satisfice, F-I-S-A-T-I-S-I-C-I-N-G, satisfice, not satisfying, but satisfice. He won the Nobel Prize for his work in satisficing, in which he basically argued that in any kind of complex system, we don't know enough, as you've indicated, to maximize. But he said we also don't know enough or have the time to optimize, because we have to know how the variables trade off. So satisficing is the notion that what we do when we encounter a complex situation is that we make as much sense as that we can, and we actually settle on the first solution that solves the problem in the most immediate way. We can't explore all the possibilities. So maximizing in economics, where these terms originate, is the notion that you have perfect information and you can compare all the possibilities and you pick the best one. Optimizing is that you know enough to be able to identify all the trade-offs. Satisficing is that we're in a fast-paced world. You've got to do something. When you find a solution, you go with it. It won't be the optimum, it won't be the maximum, it'll be a good enough. And that what we're in the midst of in a fast-paced world is having to come up with good enough actions and to move forward around those good enoughs. So as I work with programs, it's a bit like Randy's discussion of giving people permission to muddle through. I actually don't think there are such things as best practices. I think that the whole notion of maximizing gets people in trouble. One of the important premises in systems theory is that in a healthy system, no part of the system is operating at its maximum. Healthy systems have reserve capacity. Think about our bodies. We have the capacity to sprint, to have our heartbeat go very, very high for bursts of time. But if our heartbeat stays at that rate, we die. We can't sustain. And people who run marathons train to be able, especially the Iron Man things, to be able to maximize their performance within some window of time. But their training is to be able to do that for 2-3 hours in a marathon, 6 hours, even 24 hours. And after that, it can't keep going. You can't keep that kind of maximum. So the mental models that people have, and you've got all these policymakers out there calling for human service agencies and government to maximize performance, to come up with best practices. And these mental models inhibit innovation. They create false kinds of comparative criteria about what efficiency represents that put huge pressures on programs comparatively to maximize resources. And those very notions, those mental models that come from engineering and come from economics are at the heart of what developmental evaluation and systems thinking and complexity are questioning and saying that we don't know enough in dynamic situations to get to maximum solutions. So what we have to do is find satisficing solutions, things that get us through, and that is a form of incrementalism. It's a form of muddling through. We can learn from that. We can get better at it, but we're not going to maximize, because by the time we figured stuff out, the world will have changed and we'll be having to do new learnings and new understandings along the way. So you've raised some really serious language issues that are at the heart of what these issues in evaluation are. Thank you for that.